If you ask me to pick my favorite franchise of the Real Housewives, I'll hem and haw and ask upon which metric and change my mind 3 times in 30 seconds and make you wish you never asked. But if you ask me to pick my favorite housewife, I won't miss a beat.
Tamra. The answer's Tamra.
The woman invented the game. She took the show from a cute little docuseries about rich Californians with misbehaving children living in Bush 2's America and turned it into a movement, a way of life. She may not have the mainstream recognition that women like Nene Leakes, Bethany Frankel, or Teresa Giudice have, but I think she should get all the accolades for turning the show from a family drama into an all-out Game of Thrones. So, in anticipation for her long-awaited return, I wanted to give her her very own spotlight video, paying special attention to her strategic prowess. So let's go through her time on the show chronologically. We'll divide it into the eras of Tamra, at least as I see them. So era 1 is what I refer to as her housewife era, as she was kind of just a stay-at-home mom when we first meet her in season 3. She did work sometimes as a real estate agent, but explains to us that this is just for some pocket money, as she was mostly dependent on her husband Simon to live that upper middle class OC lifestyle. We see her cleaning her house and hosting bunko nights for the women in the neighborhood, but it's clear she has bigger dreams. She talks quite a bit about wanting to have a life of her own now that her kids aren't quite so young. She's about to turn 40, which is a big milestone for her. At the time, the show wasn't so much about social interaction between the housewives, but it was starting to get there, and with the other women, she carved out a niche for herself as the hot young one.
I'm the hottest housewife in Orange County.
She's a lot of fun, and the women take to her, especially when OC gets another new housewife, Quinn, who really brings the whack factor, being a devoutly religious cougar juggling 2 boyfriends. I'm a Quinn apologist, but Tamra was definitely the better fit. Vicki, not yet partaking in her signature move of icing out the new girl unless all of the old girls hate her and she has no choice, really takes to her as they are both party girls who love to whoop it up. Personally, she brings an interesting storyline with the tension between her strict husband Simon and her son from a previous marriage, Ryan. It's a relatable story for a lot of families, of how much a step-parent can take on a disciplinary role, especially when the child is a tad bit out of control as Ryan is, and the mom isn't super strict or eager to lay down the law like Tamra is. It was compelling television. All in all, she was a good fit on the show, as she was spunky and had a liveliness that was fun to watch. She had the wealthy lifestyle, making everyone jealous when she gets a Rolex for her 40th birthday party on a yacht. Yet she wasn't afraid to bear it all, showing the messiness in her family with the Ryan and Simon tension. Strategically, she set herself up as the young fun one. Another move, I'm not sure if this was her choice, is that she started going by another name. Apparently, prior to joining the Real Housewives, she'd gone by Tammy all of her life. Serendipitously, the show already had a Tammy on cast in Tammy Knickerbocker, so Tammy became Tamra. I'm not sure if this was something forced upon her or a personal choice, because we have had 2 seasons where 2 housewives share the same names, such as Lisa Rinna and Lisa Vanderpump on Beverly Hills, or Caroline Brooks and Caroline Stanberry on Dubai. But since this was so early on, I think there's a possibility production thought it would be confusing to viewers and urged her to make the change. But I think there's also a chance that this was Tamra's choice to stand out from the crowd. However it came to be, I cannot imagine her going by any name other than Tamra. So era 2 comes at us fast, and I'm calling this one Real Housewife, as this is where we see the show as we know it begin to take shape. Remember that Tamra has deemed herself the hottest housewife in Orange County and has carved out a role for herself in the group as the young one. So when a younger, hotter housewife and Gretchen Rossi joins, Tamra has to totally reorient herself. Since her turn as Baby Spice is over, she takes on the HBIC mean girl role and leads the charge on hazing Gretchen.
Hold on to your daddies, girl. Here comes Gretchen.
Which the women claim is something every new girl goes through, though that didn't seem to apply to Tamra. Gretchen is kind of an easy mark. She's engaged to a much older man who happens to be in poor health, so she's coming off as the quintessential gold digger. Tamra plays on this behind Gretchen's back, mostly riling up the other women to be anti-Gretchen and come after her, while being sweet to Gretchen's face.
I appreciate people that there's no BS and there's no two-faced side to them, and I think that Tamra is one of those type of people.
This will become a pattern for my dear Tamra, where someone thinks they are besties with her as she's so sweet and fun to their face, only to find out from someone else or once they watch the show back that she's been making fun of them the whole time. Luckily, or I guess unluckily for Gretchen, Tamra is not able to keep this to light behind the back mocking when she starts to think Gretchen is a genuinely bad person. It was hard to hate on a woman taking care of her dying fiancé, and it was making Tamra look jealous and insecure, though to be fair, she was pretty forthright about this.
Here I am getting a pedicure with absolutely no makeup on, sitting next to Miss Beautiful. Maybe I was feeling a little bit insecure.
But when Tamra allegedly sees Gretchen out partying and making out with some dude that was not her dying fiancé, she sets out to expose her. When the ladies are out to dinner, Tamra alters the course of history with one single question.
Did you go to Bass Lake?
And with that, one of our very first Housewives feuds is born. This gets very nasty very quickly, as Tamra is absolutely hell-bent on launching her Gretchen expose party, so she hatches an absolutely terrible plan, which is to get Gretchen wasted, or naked wasted, to be more precise. This is Tamra's worst action throughout her time on the show, as in addition to her plans to get Gretchen drunk, she plans to quote-unquote tempt her by lobbing her son Ryan on her while she's plastered beyond belief, so that the viewing audience would see that she's not this perfect person she puts on for the cameras. This plan backfires beyond belief, as it's been received as Tamra trying to set Gretchen up for a sexual assault by her son, which is obviously terrible and indefensible. I want to give a quick trigger warning, as I kind of want to dive into this a little bit. Skip to the next chapter if you want to skip this section. Okay, so I think this moment is actually pretty profound to look back on, as a testament to the enormous social progress we've made as a culture surrounding sexual assault. This was taped around 2008, and if you're too young to have experienced it, things were different then. Discussions about consent, especially with regard to intoxication, were not nearly as evolved as they are now, and women in the position Gretchen was in wouldn't necessarily be looked at as the victim, and aggressors in this situation wouldn't necessarily be the bad guys. Whenever I see discussions around the naked wasted situation today, Tamra is overwhelmingly the villain, but I was curious about how it was received at the time, so I went digging through some old recaps and blogs, and wasn't totally shocked to see that this wasn't necessarily the case at the time. I did see some people with a mindset mirroring to today's, but more often, comments talked about Gretchen having it coming. Thank God for the women who took a stand, completely shifting the paradigm about this kind of thing in such a short amount of time. I'm a self-proclaimed Tamra stan, but this I really can't and won't defend. I like to think that this is such a relic of the past that she'd never partake in behavior like this again. Alright, that was super heavy, so let's kind of shift gears a bit and discuss some of the other stuff she had going on in this era, but we will come back to Gretchen as she's a huge part of Tamra's story. Another person who's a huge part of Tamra's story is the OG of the OC, Miss Vicki Gunvalson, and it was with this season we started to really see the two become the dynamic duo they are today. This was the year we started to see more of a focus on interpersonal drama between the housewives, rather than just like their families and whatnot. And aside from the Gretchen and Tamra feud, we also had a major falling out between our two main OGs, Vicki and Gina Keogh. Gina has begun her trend of siding with exes over friends and randomly defends Vicki's allegedly abusive ex-husband, which of course upsets Vicki. To make the matter worse, they're fighting over some housing investment deal in one of our first ever Housewives hangers-on, Frankie. When they get into it at Lake Havasu, Tamra is forced with a choice between the two and doesn't flinch when she picks Queen Victoria, launching their reign of terror as a duo. They go full force. Not only do they hate Gretchen and Gina, they also are not shy to show how weird they think newbie Lynn Curtin is.
Who is she? Why is she sitting at our table? She's annoying.
This is on full display when the ladies take a trip to OC hotspot Del Mar Racetrack, and they make no bones about their mean girl ways. The other housewife the two really clicked with, Lori Peterson, has left the show to help her son, who is dealing with some issues, so it's just them against the world. On the family front, Tamra is really laying it all out there. Big focus for her this year is her relationship with her father. We'll see this come up again in later seasons, but she had a massive schism with him when he left her mom for her best friend. This season, she's working on repairing their relationship, and we see her go out to Iowa to visit him. She's also dealing with the guilt over Ryan's rebellious ways. He gets a tattoo that says Nugget on his inner lip, later revealing it was in honor of the baby he lost. We see her struggling to come to terms with the different lives her eldest is living compared to her three younger children, who have had a much more comfortable and stable situation, at least for now. We also start to see some cracks in her marriage with her husband, Simon. Right away, there's tension as he left his lucrative job at a car dealership to strike out on his own, but they're feeling the financial hit. We're also really starting to see what a mismatch they are. Simon is really buttoned up and serious, while Tamra is a hyper-extroverted wild child. It's still seeming like it could be a case of opposites attract, but we're starting to see some real issues pop up, especially with their parenting and socialization styles. We're seeing a continuation of Simon's issues with Ryan, though progress seems to kind of be made at some points throughout this season. But more glaringly, Simon has a major issue with how social Tamra is. It's starting to seem a little controlling, coming up when the ladies go to Vegas and she won't go to a nightclub without him. We see this type of stuff come up enough on Housewives, so maybe it's relatively normal to have a no partying without the other rule, but it's clear that this is a major concern in the Barney marriage. The reunion is all-out social warfare, with Tamra taking an offensive position against Gretchen, who's just lost her fiancé Jeff, bringing up off-camera drama and stories about some guy named Jay, who claimed to be Gretchen's boyfriend, calling Tamra in the middle of the night looking for Gretchen. The whole thing is messy, and Gretchen is firmly on the defense, especially when Tamra gets a layup from Gina. This puts the Tamra-Gretchen feud officially out in the open, as while the season was filming, Tamra was good about apologizing to Gretchen and being nice to her face, but after watching back, it's officially war between the two. This era was some of Tamra's best strategic work, as it had implications for all housewives who would come after her, which was most of them, and really laid down the blueprint for how she'd operate on the the show moving forward. So this takes us into season 5 in our next era, which I'm referring to as the short sale era because it's the season where the economy had officially crashed, and Tamra must have said the phrase short sale about 89 times.
Short sales and the foreclosures.
So the Great Recession has now plummeted the real estate industry, which has had a huge impact on Real Housewives, as that was how a lot of the women made most of their cash. The show was supposed to be about sun-kissed suburban luxury, but now we were seeing evictions occurring on camera.
Well, I'm here to serve an eviction notice. You've been served. Your mom and dad has been served.
And all of the housewives, besides of course Queen of Financial Planning Vicki, are really feeling the burn of it. This included the Barneys, who are now fairly open about the strife in their marriage. They're having to downsize their house, which is devastating to Tamra as it's the only house her youngest has ever known. This change really throws the focus of the show into the group dynamics, and while we got glimpses of that in season 4, with season 5 we see the show officially move into the modern era and turn into what it is today. Socially, Tamra is still at Gretchen's throat. They openly hate each other and can hardly be in the same room together without a fight erupting. To make matters worse, Gretchen has started dating the OG housewife hunter, Slade Smiley, and some, shall we call them, party pictures of Gretchen have come out, so Tamra and Vicki are just dripping in ammo against her. There's great change in the OC. Tamra's worked her magic on Lynn, bonding over working out, a passion of Lynn's, along with shopping and creating cuffs. The other OG, Gina Keogh, is starting to be phased out, leaving after episode 3, but not before sticking up for Gretchen and calling Tamra a mean girl. Gina's time as an orange holder may have come to an end, but she's never truly gone, and this will not be the last we hear from her. A new face has popped up in Gina's wake, one Alexis Bellino, who Tamra would later deem Jesus Jugs. If you want to hear more about Alexis's earlier years on the show, check out my video on the worst sophomore performances. But Alexis's defining features are her questionable wealth, her youth, and her Christianity. She starts off as a peacemaker, being a more natural ally to Gretchen, but also getting on with Tamra, especially going out as couple friends with their husbands. Alexis is very keen to get Tamra and Gretchen to work out their issues. She actually claims at one point it's her dying desire, which is just hilarious. Tamra's now upset about a blog Gretchen has written that Tamra wants down. If you want to read it, I'll post a link in the description of this video, but basically it details a bunch of times Tamra has allegedly lied. This becomes a bit of a hurdle in their potential friendship, but we do see them having fun together at times. So on to the big event of this era, her crumbling marriage. We'd seen some sense that things are amiss in previous eras, but this season things reached a fever pitch. Right away it was clear that there was tension, and Simon is starting to come off as more and more controlling. He's constantly upset with what she's wearing and feels she's not being classy enough for his liking. Add on the money struggles and things are not good. I think seeing the Bellino's marriage may have been a bit of a mirror for Tamra to see how her quote-unquote traditional marriage was coming off. Both Tamra's husband Simon and Alexis's husband Jim have a rule against traveling without them, so they crash the girls' trip to Florida, and it kind of just kills the vibe a bit, especially for Vicki. Tamra realizes that she sometimes wants to just have fun with her friends, and she's not doing anything wrong if her husband isn't with her the whole time. Simon's theory is that this newfound independent woman shtick is coming from Vicki, who we now know was really disconnected from her husband at the time, Dawn, and thinks she's a bad influence. Tamra and Vicki are certified besties by this point, and the tension between Vicki and Simon causes a major issue in both of these relationships for Tamra. We see her trying to prove herself to Simon, going so far as to get his name tattooed on her ring finger.
It's the first unselfish thing you've done in a long time.
But it's clear at this point in their lives that they're a total mismatch. I'm not sure if I buy this theory that it's all Vicki's meddling, but rather Tamra finally getting a bit of independence and starting to be celebrated for who exactly she was. There seems to be a subtext in a lot of their fights that a lot of the tension is about her being on the show. Fellow Tamra aficionados will know she's mentioned that the whole reason she married Simon in the first place was because she thought she needed someone super grounded who would keep her freebird spirit in check, but at least as the show seemed to portray it, Simon wanted someone a little more Stepford than Tamra could give him. I think it always would have ended up like it did. And the ending was explosive and one of Tamra's most emotional moments during her tenure. We see tense scenes of them fighting while getting ready for the finale party of season 5. Simon is upset her dress is too short as per usual, but they're arguing in a way that's rawer than we're used to seeing on TV. It's feeling a little voyeuristic. Cut to them in the limo where the fight continues and escalates, especially with accusations of Tamra being a bad mom, which seems to be her deepest trigger, causing Tamra to reach her breaking point.
You can go yourself, you ass.
I'm sorry.
You.
Bad?
You're an ass. You're a total ass. I want a divorce. You.
From there, we see him realizing the magnitude of what just happened and trying to sweeten her up, but it's clear that this is the end. This whole moment is just so raw and intense. We've seen a lot of divorce on the Housewives, and we've seen intense fights between couples, but this is one of those moments that you just don't forget. At this point in Housewives history, we'd seen Teresa's table flip, we'd seen Sheree shift Kim's wig, so it's not like this was the first water cooler moment, but it was one of the most authentic moments of pure emotion that you just can't forget. Even if this happened somewhat as a result of the cameras, this wasn't something that they were doing for the the cameras. It also felt so inevitable. We'd seen their relationship slowly decline, or at least seen them become more and more comfortable with showing us its ugly side. So it felt like such a climax to this arc of Tamra's story on the show. We get the big payoff when we get a tacked on scene of her in her new single woman apartment getting officially served with divorce papers. But don't worry, Tamra is taking it as well as one could, which leads to our next era, I'm a free bitch baby.
No. I'm a free bitch. Woo!
So Tamra comes into season 6 much later. She has a new boyfriend who she swears up and down that she had no relationship with prior to the divorce. She keeps him private for a little while, introducing him with one of the worst housewife tropes of all time, the sexy bathtub scene. I want to say she was the first to do this, so again, she's a trailblazer, but this is one we could have done without. She feels free now that she's away from Simon and has a new outlook on life. She even tries to turn over a new leaf with her nemesis Gretchen, though that quickly falls apart over jokes about an evil eye.
So, were you calling me an evil bitch? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Something she'd also fight with Brooks about. She has this weird flirtationship with friend of Fernanda, again blazing the trail of the bicurious mini storyline people like Adriana and Kenya Moore would later replicate. Fernanda is kind of a weird blip in Housewives history because I'm almost positive she was meant to be full-time, but that's a video for another day. She now openly can't stand Alexis, and Gretchen obviously, so we start to see the formation of alliances, with Vicki and Tamra taking in one-season wonder Peggy Tanos in The Divide, especially when she and Alexis fall out. Her and Vicki are officially in their Lucy and Ethel era, especially now that Simon is out of the picture. Vicki milks the hell out of their previous tension the season prior, and Tamra takes her on a trip to Cabo to make up for it. This launches their first instance of being confused over the order of a tequila shot.
I think we lick it, slam.
Wait, lick it, suck it, slam.
This would become a running gag, and I fully expect to see it featured on season 17. Vicki also kind of randomly decides to divorce Dawn at this point. I mean, it was clear that their marriage wasn't great, and she talked incessantly about the state of her love tank, but I've always kind of wondered if Tamra divorcing Simon is what encouraged her to bite the bullet and officially split from him. I mean, we all know now that Brooks Ayers was waiting in the wings and they were already together, but I don't know, it's kind of a pet theory of mine. We do see that Tamra is really good at handling Vicki, especially when she's freaking out.
You're strong. Think about insurance right now.
We get a lot of her emotional story in the fallout of her divorce. Things are tense, and at one point Simon gets arrested for throwing a dog leash at her. And just when we thought we were rid of her, in comes Gina Keogh, who's been taking Simon's side in the whole ordeal and speaking with the press, forcing Tamra to bring her on camera to confront her. This leads to a fever pitch at the finale party where Tamra gives her legal documents.
This is a letter from my attorney. It's a letter of cease and desist.
Go give it to my attorney.
No, here's your letter, bitch.
And does the most housewife thing imaginable.
Oh my God. I thought this was a classy party.
Say what you want about Tamra, but there's no denying she knows how to deliver a finale. Alright, so this takes us to our next era, which I'm calling Center Orange, because even though she's had it before, the strategic moves she makes this season were just masterful and officially made her the lead of the show. Where she spent her early seasons really leaning into her personal storylines, this year things had stabilized. She was very happy with Eddie. In fact, they get engaged, which is a really sweet moment. But aside from questions on whether she should move in with Eddie and an intense moment where she officially signs the divorce papers, her home life is mostly in check. Ryan and Eddie mostly get along, so there's really not much for her to pry into, so she turns her attention outwards. Season 7 opens with Tamra making the shocking move of deciding to befriend Gretchen. She kind of felt it out last season, but this season she's determined to make it stick and offers Gretchen a friendship bracelet as dowry. It's not really clear what exactly sparked this reconciliation and why both of them were so open to it after years of hating each other, but this was a stroke of pure brilliance. I think when the dynamics don't change and people never fall out or befriend someone new, it gets real stale real fast. Beverly Hills. So Tamra taking it upon herself to make this move gave the show a sudden intrigue. It's a bit of a slow burn. They have moments of apprehension, such as when Slade decides he's a comedian and makes the bizarre move to call Tamra fat in his bit, which is just like objectively not true. But they both are determined to make the friendship work, and surprisingly it does. I think this was the move that helped Tamra usurp Vicki for the throne of orange crowns, as suddenly Vicki became the B story. Now that Gretchen and Tamra are besties, Vicki is forced to pull a 1984 and try to convince us that she and Alexis are also besties and always have been.
I love Alexis. I totally do. I can see her side to every story. She's got an amazing husband, amazing marriage, perfect kids, perfect body, perfect face. We go shopping all the time, and we go to charity events, and we totally give back to the world. Are you kidding me?
She's hilariously jealous of Gretchen and Tamra's newfound friendship, but luckily it's not her sole focus as she has a new boyfriend. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Brooks Ayers era is officially upon us. Things start out fine. We even see the four go on a couples excursion where Tamra randomly gets jealous thinking Eddie is interested in Vicki, but as the season progresses, Tamra starts to turn on Brooks. She finds hypocrisy in Vicki going after Slade for unpaid child support when Brooks has done the same thing. She also feels like Brooks is controlling over Vicki and seems to be using her for her wealth. She's united in this front with Vicki's daughter Brianna, and while things build throughout the season, things reach an all-out meltdown between Tamra and Vicki at the finale party. My favorite of all time, when Brooks believed Tamra gave him the evil eye, leading to Vicki screeching iconic lines.
You're supposed to be my friend! My friend, my soulmate, my sister! Then act that way!
This is their first major fallout, but it certainly wouldn't be the last. Aside from Brooks, another major player enters the scene, Miss Heather Fancy Pants Dubrow. Tamra technically introduces her with a graceful story of her picking back up real estate to show Heather a lot she is in no way interested in. But the two really click and Heather becomes a key ally for Tamra. It's kind of interesting and shows Tamra's dominance on the show, as Heather has a major alpha type of personality and seems primed to take the lead position, but when Tamra was there, she just couldn't crack it. This is evidenced by her slipping right into that spot when she returned for season 16, her only Tamra-less season. Now that she's gotten a taste for that center orange sweetness, I have to think she's not going to quietly go back to side character status. I've speculated on this in my How to Save Real Housewives of Orange County vid, so if you want further extrapolation, check that out. But I'm so curious to see how the two approach this, as I would imagine they both feel entitled to the center position. But back to the timeline. So Tamra helps lead the charge on gang up on Alexis Day, which was easy to do as Gretchen has officially turned her back on Miss Bellino for a much stronger ally in Tamra. Heather also absolutely hates Alexis.
She doesn't seem that cerebral to me.
And Vicki is not strong enough to fully protect her, so when the ladies take a trip to Costa Rica,
Costa Rica is in Mexico, so it's south.
Alexis has an absolutely terrible night, which spills over into the finale party where her husband Jim makes a surprise appearance and sits down for a confrontation with Terry Dubrow, but flees into the night when he sees Tamra approaching. This is kind of hilarious that this tiny blonde woman would be the one to put the fear of God into Jim Bellino, but she's just that powerful. She's smart and has a sharp tongue and has this quality that lets you know she's in charge. The season 7 reunion is one of Tamra's best performances. It's here she calls Alexis Jesus Jugs.
You are psychotic, Jesus Jugs. You're psychotic.
Jesus Jugs?
Which really does capture the Alexis Bellino experience. I love her, but it's true. Tamra and Vicki are also majorly on the outs and have some pretty vicious accusations for each other.
And you were still legally married when you started liking Eddie. Do you want me to tell everybody what you did in Cabo after I left? When you called me the next day and said I woke up naked next to this man.
Oh my God,
drunk?
are you serious?
Really, Vicki? You're
liar.
gonna deny it?
Yes.
The Center Orange era continues into season 8, where Tamra's main focus is wedding planning and opening her gym, Cut Fitness. Jim Bellino is threatening to sue her for calling Alexis Jesus Jugs, a threat he would follow through on years later. She and Vicki kind of resolve things. They hadn't been speaking in the off-season, but when Tamra hosts a party to show the women Cut Fitness, nobody is safe. She has an epic shouting match with Alexis that nearly gets physical.
Get out.
Don't touch me.
I'm not gonna touch you. I'm gonna change your chair. There it is. Get out.
Her and Vicki have added tension with the launch of Wines by Wives, a business that kind of just fell off. But the two get into it over Vicki not pulling her weight, instead putting her focus into her solo project, Vicki's Vodka. Tamra names her blend of wine Too Good to Throw, which is a nice touch. Tamra brings back on Lori Peterson, who goes on a rampage against Vicki, accusing her of having a threesome with her sister?
I have never been with multiple partners in my life!
Leading to an all-out meltdown from Vicki on a mountain.
Oh, I'm so mad! I'm so mad!
Lori kind of fades away, as does the relationship between Gretchen and Tamra, especially when she feels like Tamra wasn't appreciative enough of the bachelorette party she threw her in Mexico. To be fair, she and Heather had planned a dinner at a stuffy restaurant, which is just not Tamra's vibe, especially on her bachelorette trip. Vicki's on a mission to get Tamra back in her good graces and takes her out to whoop it up at On Delays, and it works. The Gretchen and Tamra relationship continues to unravel as everyone started to be anti-Gretchen at this point, and she starts to kind of be iced out and is starting to seem a little desperate. I'm actually a fan of Gretchen. Yeah, we exist. But her girl boss shtick was getting played out, and while I love the competition over who was truly offered a part in Malibu Country, a lot of people were seeing her attempts at a storyline as inauthentic, especially when she staged this over-the-top proposal for Slade, which still hasn't resulted in a marriage all these years later. I kind of wonder if Tamra instigated the friendship with Gretchen solely to neutralize her, because it was really completely out of the blue that they decided to be friends, and Tamra was so quick to discard her. She's also later said that the friendship was never real, so like, what was the point? I kind of wonder if producer Tamra wanted to wrap this feud up, so she staged a way to do it. I don't know, give me your theories on why the situation went the way it did. Aside from this, Tamra gets the most personal she's ever gotten when she gives a speech detailing her struggles with suicidal ideation growing up. This is another incredibly vulnerable moment from Tamra, and was honestly kind of a shock to me. We'd seen a lot of emotional moments from Tamra, but I didn't realize that she had had a crisis of this magnitude, and it was brave and healing to see her open up about her past struggles. She has her mother along with her on the ride, and we see that her mother is not the ooey gooey type who told Tamra how much she loved her all the time, and I think we see the reverberations of this on the way Tamra deals with emotion on the show. It'll come up more later in like an era or two, but she seems to be kind of fighting the side of herself that wants to shut everything down, while also wanting to let the part of her that feels deeply out. It's an interesting dichotomy that lives within her, and throughout her time on the show, we see her go back and forth between the sweet, compassionate side and the hardened fuck your feelings side, especially when it comes to her relationship with Shannon Beador, but we're not quite there yet. Tamra would also get her own wedding special after season 8, an honor really only given to some of the Housewives all-timers like Nene, Bethany, Candy, and Kim Zolciak. This shows me that Bravo really saw what a star they had in her. This was a really great strategic era for Tamra. She showed that she could deliver the drama as well as the tender personal story. She wasn't afraid to reshuffle the social deck of cards if it meant the story would be more interesting, and would welcome newbies with open arms. This moved her up in front to Vicki's detriment. She was also regularly getting those Housewives status markers such as first tagline, center orange, and first seat at the reunion. It was the Tamra show, and everyone else was just living in it. So season 9 brings us into a new era with a gutting of the cast, losing Gretchen, Alexis, and Lydia, the last of whom really should have stayed a one-season wonder. But it brought us OC mainstay Shannon Beador, and in her honor, I'm naming this era, You Will All See the Truth.
You guys will all see the truth. We'll all see the truth. Stop it!
Tamra starts the season seemingly with a plan to take down Heather Dubrow. Despite coining her fancy pants and spending 2 seasons joking about how highbrow Heather is, it seems she and Vicki have had enough and spend the early episodes launching a Dubrow takedown. They ice her out in Hawaii and continue this trend back in the OC, which is made worse when Heather brings on Shannon. Heather feels miffed when Tamra and Vicki immediately take to Shannon, which is especially weird because Vicki hates all newbies.
Oh joy, another new bitch I gotta like.
But Shannon seems to be the exception. Tamra starts openly hating on Heather, and things reach a fever pitch when 2 things happen. The first is when Heather talks to Eddie about Tamra's desire to have a baby. She has this weird robot baby storyline that we can kind of just gloss over because what was that? But Tamra gets upset with Heather for bringing it up because Eddie wanted to keep it private. I guess that one's kind of on Tamra for telling Heather in the first place. The other big issue is more business related. Tamra is officially in her cut fitness businesswoman era, so she's upset when Heather has her competitor on the morning show she's guest hosting, Good Day LA. When she brings Tamra and Eddie on, she completely ices them out, but the two are able to reach a resolution and talk things out before this turns into a true falling out. Eagle-eyed fans have pointed out that Heather asked the dude in charge of the mechanical bull at Heather's hoedown celebrating the breaking of ground on her new house to turn the speed up when Tamra gets on, causing her to injure her arm. Heather explained it away as her not trying to purposely injure Tamra, but I don't know, I'm in the mood to stir the pot. Living in the Tamraverse for the past 9 months I've been working on this video must have really gotten to me. But while we're on the subject, this is the season Tamra really gets caught for her pot-stirring ways. It's the only time it will fully happen, but with this, we enter our Tamra takedown era. But let's back up a bit, because we've got to talk about the 2 important housewives who have entered the scene and become key components in this takedown. One, as I've mentioned previously, is Shannon Beador, and the other one is Lizzie Rovzik, who you can get a full breakdown on in my One Season Wonders video. You can also hear about Shannon's Season 9 performance in my Top 10 Rookies video. I'm really creating quite a catalog. But yeah, so let's start with Shannon. So Tamra loves Shannon upon meeting her. She's fun Shannoning, hosting a shot-filled dinner party, and has the right amount of kook factor to be a lock on the show. And I think Tamra knew that the show needed some new faces with staying power in the absence of Gralexis. Plus, maybe this is cynical, but Shannon and Heather did not get on whatsoever. Since Tamra and Vicki by extension were looking to take down Heather, Shannon was an easy mark. They take her in immediately, enraging Heather, but making Shannon feel very accepted. Shannon has her own massive story going on with her dissolving marriage, confiding in Tamra and only Tamra the pain she's feeling in the relationship. So when Tamra tells Heather all of this, and Heather repeats it to a table full of randos, one of whom told David's affair partner, Shannon knew that Tamra had been spreading her private business and starts to question her. Tamra eases her momentarily by claiming it was out of concern for Shannon in an effort to get Heather to stop picking at her. This might have worked if it wasn't for another side plot that's brewing. Enter Lizzie, the other newbie. Now Lizzie came in with a massive disadvantage, and that was that she was incredibly hot, which obviously put Tamra's whole self-concept massively at risk.
I'm the hottest housewife in Orange County.
Tamra's welcoming to her at first, but when she doesn't go to Lizzie's birthday party, actually only Vicki and invisible Danielle go, Lizzie gets upset. It also gets back to her that Tamra was making fun of her outfit and a new feud is born. Tamra's kind of dismissive of Lizzie's feelings, which seems to really hurt her, as I think Lizzie thought that their friendship was deeper than Tamra did. We see this happen from time to time with Tamra, and I think it's just that Tamra is super social and talks to people all the time, so people think they're closer to Tamra than she thinks she is to them. But the divide between Lizzie and Tamra deepens when the group plays a drunken, off-camera couples game of fuck, marry, kill. Tamra claims that Lizzie said Tamra is mad because her husband wants to F her, while Lizzie claims the comment was Mary. I guess we'll never know what really happened, but the big takeaway is that they now openly hate each other. So at this point, going into their cast trip to Bali, things are kind of grim for Tamra. Lizzie hates her. I guess Invisible Danielle does too. Shannon is feeling a bit unstable with Tamra. Her relationship with Vicki is in a bit of a rocky place, mostly due to Brooks's influence, who's a massive Tamra hater at this point. Her only real solid ally is Heather, which is kind of wild because they had just been fighting. So when they get to Bali, Lizzie puts her boots to the ground and slowly turns each member of the group against Tamra, and they all vow to confront her, Alexis in Costa Rica style, at the dinner table. It goes very poorly for Tamra.
You're crap, Tamra. You're the most insecure woman I've ever met my whole life. Get it together.
She's fought off attackers before, but never had a full-on gang up and doesn't know how to handle it. Even Vicki gets in on gang up on Tamra Day with her signature dramatics. The only person who's not totally anti-Tamra is Heather, but even she's a little bit apprehensive to defend her. It's bad, and Tamra leaves the trip early, finally getting a taste of her own medicine. This will be the only time Tamra has ever truly been taken down, as I think she majorly learned from this experience. I think a few issues were at play here. First off, the underestimation of Lizzie. She outright told the ladies she was smart, but they didn't believe her, and that was to Tamra's detriment. Second was the aspect of betrayal and how played the other women felt by her. Lizzie and Shannon didn't know her well enough to give her the benefit of the doubt, and probably felt kind of dumb when they found out someone they thought was their friend was making fun of them and breaching their trust. And last, she hadn't really nurtured any of her relationships that season. Vicki was on guard with her, just kind of getting back on good footing after their previous falling out, and was already living in a place of defensiveness regarding her relationship with Brooks. And given the history, of course she believed that Tamra was talking poorly about him. With love, I think Vicki can also be the type to go where the power is, and for once that wasn't with Tamra. Thank God she made back up with Dubrow, because if not, Tamra would have really been on an island. Back in Orange County, Tamra patches things up with Vicki, even having a heart-to-heart with Brooks, so things seem to be getting a little better. She still hates Lizzie though. On the family front, things are rocky. Ryan has a new girlfriend and is moving away, upsetting Tamra.
This is not right!
She also reveals that her oldest daughter had stopped speaking with her. She's kind of going through it on every level. She's on fire at the reunion, giving Lizzie a Bellino-esque nickname.
Eddie would never touch Lizzie's Kentucky Fried Titties with a 10-foot pole.
Though this one doesn't have the staying power, and yells what might be her most iconic line.
That's my opinion!
She also gives Shannon a genuine apology and seems to really want to get back to a better place with her. We're starting to see the markers of her social comeback within the group that would come the next era. All in all, this was Tamra's worst strategic era, as she finally got called out on stirring the pot and talking behind people's backs in a way that actually stuck. I think this was an interesting era though, because it set so much up for the future, namely the personal family strife she's going through, the big breakdown in her relationship with Vicki, and her ability to wiggle out of potential takedowns. So this takes us into what I'll refer to as our personal journey era, seasons 10 and 11. These are two of my favorite seasons of all time, but share a similarity for Tamra, as both seasons start with her introducing a goal, working at it throughout the season, and accomplishing it at the end. For season 10, that was her baptism, and for season 11, it was her fitness competition. So season 10 starts off really heavy. Tamra's feeling isolated. She gets her boobs done and feels weird that none of her friends are waiting for her in the recovery room. Tamra's journey with her boobs is like a side quest that she's constantly going through for her duration of her time on the show. Aside from that, Shannon reveals that David had been having an affair while taping last season, and Vicki announces that Brooks has cancer. Tamra has also opened up more about her daughter no longer speaking with her as a result of her and Simon's contentious divorce. Things are really heavy with the OC ladies. Tamra's only ally is still Heather. Her and Vicki are in a terrible place, but neither think that they're at fault, so they're kind of at a standstill. Shannon's still mad at her, and she and Vicki are besties, so we have a bit of a split house dynamic, which is furthered when Heather introduces Miss 30-year-old Megan King Edmonds, who Shannon and Vicki hate on sight. Another newbie is Katie Hamilton, another one of these mysterious potential housewives who are mostly edited around until they disappear completely. I'd love to do a video on these ladies at some point, so if that's something you guys would be interested in, let me know. But anyways, so mysterious Katie is very religious, so Tamra opens up to her about her own journey and recently finding God herself. Tamra's aware that people might doubt it.
I'm saved. And if you don't like it, you can suck it.
And I've seen enough chatter about people not buying into this, but to me it makes perfect sense. Aside from the social takedown she'd faced last season, the severed relationship with her daughter is really weighing on her. I can't imagine how devastating the situation would feel for either party, and I'm sure she felt really out of control and primed to look for relief from the incredibly heavy burden she was carrying. She also is seeing major change with her son Ryan, as his fiancée Sarah is now pregnant, so it's a lot of big change. I think finding a deeper sense of faith during a time of chaos totally tracks, and while Tamra didn't seem to speak heavily about her spiritual life prior to this, it's not like she was a loud and proud atheist either, where this was a complete 180 from her former self. I don't know, I actually enjoyed seeing her find some sense of peace in her life. Plus her baptism was absolutely iconic, but we'll get there. So she's trying to reclaim her good standing with the group and starts buddying up to Vicki again. Despite all of the drama between the two of them, I think at their core they really love each other, with Vicki especially really valuing her role as Tamra's best friend. Shannon puts up a bit of a fight, not totally ready to make nice, but finally relents when the ladies take a trip to Tahiti and the Trace Amigas are officially born under the musical stylings of an iPhone ringtone. Lizzie's kind of in and out again. There were rumors she was fired for not bringing it, though I've also read she quit because of Tamra's bullying, so I don't really know. But on to the big event of this season, the cancer scam. So I broke this down in my psychic storyline video, but out of the blue, Tamra becomes a diehard fan of the psychic she's never met in person, but who's totally predicted a lot of stuff in her life, and has to bring Megan and Heather to go see him. I should mention that earlier this season, Vicki had a psychic that Tamra openly challenged and was skeptical of, but whatever. So after a few predictions, Brooks's cancer is gracefully brought up, and the psychic cast doubt on the whole situation.
I just don't see it.
So he doesn't have cancer?
Spinning into gear one of the most epic housewife storylines of all time. Now, I said it before and I'll say it again. The psychic shtick was all a ruse to get this idea that Brooks was faking his cancer on the table. Whether this was orchestrated by Tamra herself or production, I guess we'll never know. But somebody definitely wanted it out there. Megan King Edmonds enters her detective era and leads the charge on the Brooks Exposed party, allowing Tamra to kind of play the middle. She starts off apprehensive, but eventually, like all of the others, comes to the conclusion that Brooks is indeed faking cancer and that Vicki was in on the whole ruse, being motivated by gaining sympathy and the casseroles that would accompany it. Tamra becomes the point of contact in Brooks' quest to speak his truth, showing her a typo-riddled medical document of sorts, which doesn't fool Megan or Shannon, who are the closest thing the show has to experts. When Tamra gets baptized in a country club pool at the end of the season, the women all confront Vicki about her lies.
So I'm being nailed to the cross like Jesus was, and he did nothing wrong. He's Jesus Christ, and he did nothing wrong. He was nailed to the cross. That's how I feel.
Tamra hasn't totally turned on Vicki, especially as she's trying to practice compassion and forgiveness and being a good Christian. She is literally at her baptism. Vicki finally admits that she fabricated parts of the story at the reunion. Shannon is absolutely livid, feeling like a fool because she had been defending Brooks and Vicki and had genuinely believed the story for a spell. Tamra seems to just want Vicki to be done with Brooks. She's disgusted by the whole situation, but sees Vicki's real issue as being snowed by Brooks rather than being an evil mastermind. So this takes us to season 11, one of the greatest in the history of Housewives. So as mentioned previously, Tamra's big personal storyline is her training for a fitness competition. I kind of hate these storylines. Teresa did it on Jersey too, but I don't know, it's just boring to me. But for Tamra, it makes sense why she wants to do it. First off, she's always been super athletic and fitness focused. She is a gym owner after all, and it's a good goal to work towards. I think it also was meant to help her gain some sense of control. Her daughter is still not talking to her, and even though she doesn't open up about it as much as she does the next season, it's really clear that this is absolutely devastating to her. We see her training throughout the season. She has this coach Mia, who we see giving her motivational speeches throughout, and is kind of a sounding board for Tamra as she deals with the batshit insane stuff going on around her this season. We also see her not eating much and not drinking throughout the season, culminating in the fitness competition, which of course she wins. So okay, let's get to the good stuff. The social dynamics and events that happen this season are just off the wall. She and Shannon have officially buried the previous tension and are best friends now, a united front against Vicki, who they, along with Megan and Heather, absolutely hate. They're fixated on how she was participating in a cancer scam and is not taking ownership of it, which she's not. Vicki begins her I was con tour, maintaining that she's in no way responsible for what Brooks did. Vicki's forced to go back in the vault to find allies, Gina Keogh jump scare, until the women meet Kelly Dodd, who makes the bizarre decision to align herself with Vicki, though after watching Kelly for 5 seasons, it totally makes sense that she would take the contrarian position. Despite her allegiance to Vicki and utter inability to control her anger, Tamra likes Kelly. She sees her old self in Mrs. Dodd, seeing that she's kind of acting out as a result of her bad marriage. This is kind of easy for her to do, as most of Kelly's rage is directed at Shannon.
Okay, Mrs. Roper.
Though she is able to get over it when Kelly calls her names at the sushi party.
You dumb yeah! I'm a dumb
This is until they go to Ireland and go on a bar crawl, where Tamra and Kelly start getting into it over Kelly flicking noses and dredging up stuff about Heather Dubrow, leading to Kelly going for the absolute jugular.
No wonder why her daughter doesn't talk to her.
causing Tamra to get physical with Kelly off camera and go into an absolutely rabid state, icing her out for the rest of the trip. Tamra can take a lot, but it seems like if you really want to get a reaction out of her, bring up her children. But let's back up a bit. So despite starting the season in a bad place with Vicki and her eventually talk things out at Kelly's beach party, where Tamra decides to forgive Vicki. I don't know this for a fact, obviously, but I guess that some of this was realizing that the show cannot go forward if none of the women will film with Vicki. Though I do think Tamra is also someone who is very easy to forgive. This gets solidified when Brianna has a medical emergency, helping them see that at the end of the day they really care for each other. Things stay good until that fateful Ireland trip where Kelly gets caught on a grainy night cam exposing all of the terrible things Vicki had said about them when she was mad, including Shannon allegedly being beaten by her husband and Tamra's husband Eddie being gay. This is the final straw for Shannon and Tamra, and they are madder than they've ever been at Vicki. We'll pick this back up in the next era. All in all, this was a strategically decent era for Tamra. We saw her completely bounce back from her takedown era and pivot all of the social ire onto Vicki, though Brooks did most of the heavy lifting. We saw her twice take over control as the lead of the show by creating these journeys for herself, which kind of served as a narrative timeline for the season. She took on the finale party both seasons with events centered around her. She also shed the show villain status, interestingly escaping the title in season 11 when literally every other cast member took a turn as the villain at some point. Even though Vicki became a bit of the focus on the show, it was kind of framed as Tamra and friends' reaction to Vicki rather than having Vicki all out narrate the show. So this brings us into season 12, which I'm referring to as the Alienation era for two reasons. First, due to her personal storyline of dealing with parental alienation as a result of her daughter not speaking with her, which becomes a very heavy focus for Tamra this year, and second, for the shunning of Vicki by her and Shannon. This season marks the exit of Heather, so we're left with kind of two sides in Shannon and Tamra versus Kelly and Vicki, who are both on the outs after the whole van ride in Ireland fiasco. This is a heavy season for Tamra on the home front. She opens up more than she ever has about the situation with her daughter. They make some movement, she sees her and Simon and it goes well, and even gets invited to her daughter's graduation, but ends up making things worse when she posts about the event on social media against her daughter's wishes. It's really just a sad situation all around. We see Tamra give a speech on parental alienation and discusses how she had done the same thing to her father when she left her mom for her best friend. Her mom's best friend, just to clarify. Her son has also severed his relationship with Simon, so it's really just a sad dynamic for the Barneys, both present and former. She holds out hope that her daughter will one day return to her. It's clear that this has been a lingering pain, both when she does and doesn't talk about it. Season 12 is also where OC begins its downward spiral, from one of the best franchises in the Housewives oeuvre to one of the worst, mostly, I believe, as a result of terrible casting choices. First, they make the absolutely inexplicable decision to bring back season 8's Lydia McLaughlin and casted one season wonder Peggy Salahian, whom you may have noticed was left out of my best one season wonders video, which was very intentional. Both of these ladies really do not fit in with the group, though Lydia makes more of an effort to try. They both kind of try to stir drama, but are mostly inconsequential, and I don't think anyone really noticed when they didn't return the next season. What did end up being consequential was those gay and wife-beating accusations Vicki lobbed on Tamra and Shannon's husbands. They're not letting go of their anger towards Vicki for this, and spend the entirety of this season avoiding her. Vicki is maintaining that she's Jesus Christ and she's being nailed to the cross and she did nothing wrong, so the ladies are at kind of a standstill. Just when Tamra's ready to consider making up with her, Vicki invites the She-Woman Tamra Hater Club and Lizzie, Gretchen, and Ricky to her birthday party, who perpetuate these rumors about Teddy, which of course pisses Tamra off. Vicki now has a bone that Tamra and company ruined her life by calling her a con woman, so we're stuck in a cycle of both thinking the other is in the wrong. We see some movement between them when the ladies take a trip to Iceland, and Vicki has one of her signature medical emergencies, causing the women to finally get Vicki that casserole she's so desperately sought after, and a very drunk Tamra cries to Vicki about the pain of their fallout. Things seem to be better until Megan's finale candle launch party, where Tamra has once again decided not to forgive Vicki. Finally, at the reunion, Vicki and Tamra make up, taking a very incredulous Shannon along with them. This wasn't Tamra's greatest era, but it wasn't the show's either. The standstill was understandable, but still frustrating to a viewer, and the women in the middle, Lydia, Megan, and Peggy, were really not giving much that was enjoyable to watch. So this takes us to season 13 in our next era, which I've dubbed the Trace Amigas era. And I wish I could say it was a return to form for the show, but it really wasn't. I don't think this season is as bad as I initially thought when I first watched it, but compared to that golden era of 4 through 11, it just doesn't compare. So I'm coining it the Trace Amigas era because our core three and Tamra, Vicki, and Shannon are for once all in a good place with each other. They start the season by taking a shot-fueled trip to Mexico where they get their group name and create a little dance to go along with it.
Oh my god.
Personally, Tamra is dealing with the scary situation of Eddie's heart health issues. This serves as the catalyst to tension between her and Shannon. Shannon is officially going through a divorce from David at this point and is an emotional wreck leaning on Tamra for support. The problem is she's not giving the same support back to Tamra, especially as she needs it as she deals with Eddie's health issues, which are genuinely terrifying as he keeps trying treatments that aren't working, as well as the continuing situation with their daughter. Despite his heart issues, Eddie's getting more in the mix. He's getting increasingly exasperated with Shannon's dependency on Tamra and has a sit down with Vicki where he decides to forgive her for repeating rumors that he was gay. The situation with Shannon gets weird. Tamra breaks her foot on the Trace Amigas trip in Mexico, so she's using a knee scooter for a good chunk of the season and gets uberly weirded out when Shannon shows up one day on a knee scooter of her own.
Single white female much?
Tamra is doing a lot of venting about Shannon, but is scared to confront her about how she's feeling because she knows that Shannon will play the victim and have a big over-the-top reaction, which goes exactly that way when Tamra finally confronts her on their trip to Jamaica. They eventually make up, but by the reunion, things are still rocky between them. Even though we always think of them as best friends, this project has helped me see that the relationship between the two is a lot more unstable than I had thought when I viewed it in a more casual way. Vicki is happy to be back in Tamra's good graces, especially now that her and Kelly have fallen out, initially over Vicki setting Kelly's ex-husband up on a date with her friend and not telling her. Tamra fans the flames, telling Vicki everything Kelly says about her. The feud between Kelly and Vicki gets to an all-out war-torn place by the reunion when Vicki accuses Kelly of being an absentee mother who is on drugs.
I don't do cocaine. Sorry.
I don't do cocaine either. You saying you do cocaine?
I think this could be part of the reason for Vicki's demotion the next season and eventual firing, but let's wait to explore this later. The show also sees newbies added in Gina and Emily, two housewives who seem very unpopular with the masses, but I mostly like. Tamra is, of course, the bringer in of this new blood, having known Emily from a while back when she planned the hoedown baby shower she hosted in season 10, but had fallen out when she became close with the she-woman Tamra Hater Club. Gina she just casually introduces at Cut Fitness. She has some degree of tension with them, mostly with Gina, who tells Shannon Tamra was talking about her, which is kind of silly as Tamra kind of always does that, but whatever. They eventually make up. One big personal change is that her son Spencer has turned 18, and literally the moment he is legally able to do so, he is seen on camera for the first time since season 5. Simon had not allowed the kids to film, so he hadn't seen any of Tamra's life as a mom, aside from her perspective on the situation with her daughter and her interactions with her adult son Ryan. I think we were really missing out on this side of Tamra, and it was really great to see how proud she is of Spencer. Tamra was fine this season. It was definitely a rebuilding year as we entered the Gina and Emily era of the show, and Tamra did most of the heavy lifting as Shannon and Vicki weren't too interested in getting to know the new girls, and Kelly and Vicki were so at odds. This season really felt like it was missing the glam factor, which isn't super necessary on Orange County, especially compared to the other franchises, but I don't know, there was just nothing spectacular going on here, for Tamra or the show as a whole. It had drama and stuff, but there weren't a lot of iconic moments or lines. It's definitely not one I would go back and rewatch by choice, but for you all, I had to do it. But let's move on to a much better season and a new, impressive yet devastating chapter in the saga of Tamra, the Swan Song era. So big changes are afoot in the OC. We've got the entrance of Messy Bones Bronwyn and the demotion of Vicki. I've seen a few different explanations for this. One is that she was too expensive to be given a full-time salary, another that the network wanted to focus on adding younger women to keep the show going for decades more, and another that accusing Kelly of being on cocaine was just too low of a blow, especially as Kelly really didn't take it well. I think it could also be some Vicki exhaustion. I think people mostly, including me, appreciate the OG of the OC now that we've had time to miss her, but she wasn't super popular at this point. People were still mad about the cancer scam and thought she just took things too far. I think Vicki is like the funniest person alive. She's one of the very few housewives I'd actually watch on a show of just her, but I can see that 13 years of her had gotten exhausting, especially after 2 subpar seasons, and people may have thought that reducing her presence may have been the ticket. The season was definitely an improvement, but I don't think it was due to less Vicki. She was still very much in the mix, but we just didn't get any solo Vicki scenes, which is where I think she generally thrives. But for our girl Tamra, this is a messy season, but some of her most impressive strategic work. But let me give you the pieces and then we'll put the puzzle together. So the season opens with Kelly and Vicki at each other's throats. Kelly relies on porcine means to get at her.
You little pig of a fucking bitch. That's exactly what's gonna happen to you. Don't fucking text me. Don't write me. You block me. I can do whatever you want. You look like
you want.
And Tamra is forced to kind of play the middle, making both feel like she's on their side. Bronwyn straight up fangirls over meeting Tamra, who takes her in immediately, making Bronwyn her mini-me. She has a soft spot for Bronwyn, easily forgiving her for the unforgivable crime of colluding with Lizzie and Gretchen preseason. I think she sees her younger self in Bronwyn to a degree, but doesn't have a whole lot of respect for her, especially with Bronwyn constantly ratting people out for what they said about each other, especially when she gets backed into a corner, which is constantly this season. Bronwyn also clearly has a crush on Tamra, and Tamra Tamra uses this to her advantage. Hold that thought for now. So as mentioned, Vicki and Kelly are taking swipes at each other, and Vicki's retaliation for the whole pig thing is to talk around rumors that Kelly had a train ran on her.
Did a train?
Yeah, of like dudes or something.
Sexually.
Which Tamra states outright. It gets back to Kelly that Vicki was talking about the train thing, and we have more back and forth between them, with Tamra fanning the flames on both sides, telling each other what the other is saying, but making each of them feel like she's in their corner. This will become important soon. Tamra has officially turned on Emily. Their kind of apprehensive relationship this season prior has soured. Emily is planning to do a burlesque-esque performance for her totally uninterested husband Shane, but excludes Tamra from the trip, telling her that she felt Tamra would undermine the performance and she just wanted positive people there. They talk things out and joke around that they're now besties, but it's clear that it's all fake. Tamra starts buddying up to Gina, possibly to isolate Emily, as Gina and Emily begin fighting. Gina has shown time and time again that she just wants to be a member of the popular girls clique and has ditched Emily at some point like every season when given the opportunity. I think it's also important to remember that Emily is aligned with the Tamra Hate Club, being off-camera friends with all of the ex-OC housewives and Lizzie, Gretchen, and Alexis, the latter of whom she films with this season. She also produces screenshots of Bronwyn's text messages with Lizzie and Gretchen, so I've got to believe that she's got anti-Tamra sentiment being whispered in her ear, and as they're only currently filming Soldier, I'm sure she was feeling the pressure to avenge her friends. She had a mission. And our last piece, the Trace Amigas. Now, Vicki is sadly kind of irrelevant here. We don't get too much of her perspective, but Shannon is a key player in all that is about to go down. Now, despite the tension the two had the previous season, something has pulled them back together. Remember Jim Bellino? Yeah, he's back in the mix and out for blood after Shannon and Tamra appeared on Heather McDonald's podcast, saying a bunch of stuff he found defamatory, and he took them to court. Together, they've spent over $500,000 fighting the case, which is obviously incredibly stressful and has really brought them back together. So now our pieces are in place, and those pieces begin comparing notes. Up to this point, Tamra has been good at hoisting off all the stirring she's been doing, mostly onto Vicki and Bronwyn. Even ambushing Bronwyn with a Mean Girl-style call in an attempt to get out of Kelly hearing Tamra had been gossiping about her. Bronwyn seeks counsel in Emily, who, remember, has been lying in wait to expose Tamra's evil ways. So when Tamra goes on an off-camera couples getaway with Eddie, the wheels in the incoming Tamra takedown start spinning. Kelly, Bronwyn, Emily, and Shannon go to dinner and openly compare notes. Emily backs up Bronwyn, radicalizing Kelly against Tamra. Shannon tries to defend Tamra until Kelly starts spilling all of the terrible things Tamra has allegedly been saying about her, producing texts proving Tamra made fun of her injury in Arizona, and saying Tamra said she'd been gaining weight, which is enough to turn Shannon against her. Tamra knows something up. She's not getting her usual calls from Shannon and got a rage text from Kelly, so she begins to plot her defense. This is the most impressive strategic move Tamra makes in her tenure as a housewife, at least so far, as her wiggle out of this is just masterful, as the wheels were firmly spinning and everyone seemed locked and loaded for Bali Part 2. Her smartest move was being proactive in squashing this, talking to her attackers in isolated situations rather than facing them all at once. We've seen she doesn't do too well with these full-on gang-ups, but not many housewives do. She starts with her personal Brutus, Shannon Storms Beador. She immediately launches an offensive attack, having convinced herself that Shannon was the mastermind of this takedown, which is not true. Shannon doesn't know what hit her, but says she heard Tamra had been speaking poorly about her. Tamra asks Shannon to provide the dates and times of these alleged incidences and goes line by line through each one, minimizing each one as not going how it was initially presented to Shannon. Tamra keeps bringing up that Shannon wasn't defending her, so she's actually the bad friend if you think about it, and Shannon is so fragile that she just kind of concedes. They both come to the conclusion that Kelly is actually the bad one. This worked because she knew Shannon well enough to know how to best communicate with her and had nurtured a relationship enough with Shannon that Shannon wasn't primed to believe Kelly over Tamra. Next up, Kelly. So two things happen that make it easy for Tamra to turn this on Kelly. The first is that a fan had recorded the conversation between Tamra and Shannon and uploaded an out-of-context version to the internet. The video made it look like Tamra was saying Kelly had pushed her mom down the stairs when really she was just saying what other people had been saying. Kelly let her impulsivity and reactionary nature get the best of her, as per usual, and tweeted at Jim Bellino to use her as a character witness against Tamra. Remember that this lawsuit was taking over Shannon and Tamra's lives, so this was a step way too far, and most of the women saw it as a retaliation disproportionate to any rumors about Kelly Tamra had been repeating. This made Kelly look like the bad guy in most of the women's eyes, and they helped Tamra get Kelly to stop targeting her by pointing this out, which he finally relents to on their cast trip to Miami/Key West. At this point, Vicki is also launching way bigger attacks on Kelly, and they point out that even though Tamra was the one to outright talk about the train, Vicki was strongly alluding to it, so she was really the one putting it out there. And last, Bronwyn. Now, Bronwyn was really hurt when she heard all of the nasty stuff Tamra was saying about her because she really looks up to Tamra and desperately wants to be her friend, but Tamra explains away all of the negative stuff she had allegedly been saying, and Bronwyn is pretty quickly won back over. This one was kind of easy. In Miami/Key West, Tamra does a great job cementing these relationships she's won back over. She makes a point to make the Trace Amigas a priority, spending a lot of her time with just Shannon and Vicki. She also pushes back lightly when Vicki is going off on Kelly and parties with Bronwyn. Like I said, I think she learned from season 9 and did just a masterful job in preventing a takedown from happening by spotting it coming, isolating her attackers, and playing to their needs when winning them back over. She had built real relationships with the women, and they saw enough good in her to be easily swayed back over to her side. It was just a masterclass in how to escape a takedown. Tamra gives us a show in the finale episode, crying in a bush while a confused Gina looks on.
I know.
Come on, please come in. I know. You don't know. No, you don't know.
I don't know what you're talking about, lady. It's weird.
And gives a great performance at the reunion, seeming to be genuine friends with Andy when Vicki is having her meltdown.
I'm embarrassed to be part of it. This Bronwyn, she's like, well, I'm my... Really?
Personally, her focus was mainly on her sons. Her younger son Spencer is filming again and gets into it with Ryan over their differing political views. There is also a heavy focus on Ryan's mental health and the difference in Spencer and Ryan's upbringings, something she's opened up about before. Apparently, she had a big personal storyline with the launch of her CBD line, Vina CBD, that was completely cut, a sign that production was trying to phase her out. But this was really one of Tamra's best seasons, and the best for the show post-season 11. It was a great balance of drama and fun moments. The cast was working, and we even had some throwback cameos. The train seemed to be back on its tracks in the OC, which makes our next era all the more shocking. On January 25th, 2020, the Bravo community was rocked with the news Tamra Judge was leaving the Real Housewives of Orange County. It was a double whammy, as Vicki had just announced her exit the day prior. This was actually around when I was slipping from a casual fan of the show to an all-out super fan who would soon create a YouTube channel entirely centered around the Real Housewives, and it was kind of an I feel like I'm taking crazy pills type of moment, as all I saw were people celebrating. I was so confused at the time and feel like I've been mostly vindicated in the years since this dark day in Housewives history, but I want to dive into why I think people were rooting for her downfall. First off, exhaustion. She'd been on the show for 12 concurrent seasons, and maybe people just wanted to see something new. I don't relate, but it's a possibility. Second, I saw a lot of people thinking her drama was contrived, that she was doing things just for the cameras. I think, yes, this is true, but I don't care. There are cameras, and we're watching these shows for the drama and the moments, and Tamra was really good at creating both. Of course, we don't want people to create things out of thin air, but I don't think that's what Tamra was doing. She was more the type to put things out on the table because she knew drama would come from them. And last, people thought Tamra was too mean. Is she a mean girl? Well, yeah. But she plays it well, and again, these shows are about the drama. As I mentioned very early on in this video, the naked wasted thing with Gretchen in season 4 was entirely too far, and absolutely her worst moment. But aside from that, I don't think she ever went so low that it became no longer fun to watch, a la RHOC season 13. And Tamra was certainly not the only mean one on OC. Kelly has just as sharp of a tongue. As far as Tamra's reaction, despite the initial I chose to step away thing, she was pretty forthright about being fired. She went on all sorts of podcasts detailing the story about being camping with no service, getting the call that they were choosing to go in another direction, and not taking it well. They offered her a Keo-esque 3-episode arc, which she didn't take, and the show seemingly moved on. Although it didn't really, because when season 15 premiered, Tamra's name came up over and over again. Season 15 is universally panned as one of the worst in the bunch, and I'm inclined to agree. First, because of COVID, which hit in full force just a few episodes into the season, and while I do think it provides a fascinating time capsule into this moment in history, it also aired while the pandemic was still very oppressive, so I don't think most people were eager to look back on what they were still very much in. And second, it really stalled out the season. We had a lot of self-shot footage and isolation and zooming and whatnot, but it's just not the same when the ladies aren't really together. I also think some bad casting choices were made here. In the absence of Tamra and Vicki, Kelly and Shannon and surprisingly Bronwyn took over as the de facto leads, and in the words of Nene Leakes, they had the I but were missing the T. Bronwyn wasn't like a connecting type of lead, but more so she just had so much going on this season that she kind of forced herself to be the focus. I've gone in great depth on this in my worst sophomore performances video, but I think she just had so many intense things going that it reached a point of diminishing returns. Shannon was definitely the heart of the show, but doesn't have an alpha type of personality to take over control. Shannon works best when she's on the defense because I think she's really easy to root for and has a quality that kind of just makes you want to give her a hug and protect her. But she's not at her best when she's trying to anchor the show. And last, Kelly, who really does have that alpha type of quality, and in an alternate universe could very well be the center orange it girl, but in this reality, she's just too controversial. Her takes on COVID and the BLM movement, both of which were on the forefront of everyone's minds when season 15 was filming and airing, really isolated a lot of the viewership against her. Both her biggest strength and biggest downfall is her need to go against the grain, but she went too far with it in a very heated emotional time for the entire socio landscape at large, and the demands for her firing on social media were deafening. It was clear that something had to change, so Bravo fired Kelly Bronwyn and one season wonder Elizabeth and went back in the vaults to recover the person who was the key ingredient lost when the show went downhill after season 11, Heather Dubrow, for season 16. If you want a full breakdown on why I don't think Heather makes a great center orange girl, watch my video on how to save Real Housewives of Orange County, because I want to get back to Tamra here, but basically I think Heather is just too intense and controlling to be the center orange girl, and works better when she can work herself into a tizzy over champagne and chairs or whatever, rather than really get into the muck. Season 16 was definitely an improvement upon season 15, but it was clear that the show wasn't quite where it needed to be. So what was Tamra doing while seasons 15 and 16 were airing? Well, at first she mostly lied low, but soon entered our next era, the comeback era, taking on two big projects, Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip 2 and her podcast, 2 Ts in a Pod. Let's talk about Ultimate Girls Trip first. This was just a delight. When the cast was announced to be Tamra, Vicki, Phaedra, Eva, Dorinda, Jill, Brandy, and Taylor, I lost my mind, and when the location was set as Bluestone Manor, I transcended into another universe. And when the show finally premiered, it was an absolute fever dream of fun. As far as Tamra's contribution, she was just great. Brandy and Dorinda took on the role as the cast demons, terrorizing everyone around them, so Tamra for once got to be the observer and even target when Dorinda made her cry at like 8 in the morning in 80s workout gear for eating in the bedroom despite leaving her cupcakes in said bedroom. It was a very rare moment of seeing Tamra as the victim. Vicki was really going through it as Steve had just broken up with her, so Tamra kind of has to act as her liaison, being the cool one in the duo. It was just a really fun show and Tamra came off really well in it. She also launched a podcast with Beverly Hills' Teddy Mellencamp, which became a smashing success, consistently being the top-rated podcast in the genre. It's a really fun listen where they give great insight into what it's like being on the show, providing a lot of behind-the-scenes intel, and even stir up a fair bit of controversy for their takes. This was just such a great move for Tamra. It's fun to hear her opinion on all of the shows, and she has great chemistry with Teddy. Teddy is notoriously unpopular in the fandom. I've gone into great depth on why I think this is the case in my top 5 worst sophomores video if you want to hear more, but with this reputation, Tamra became the audience's fave between the two. I do think that Tamra's seal of approval on Teddy helped turn a bit of the tide in her favor, though obviously Teddy is not universally beloved by any means. Can we start to tone it down though? You don't have to love her, but I truly do not understand why people at her with hateful messages on social media. But both of these projects really help people remember how much they love Tamra, and with OC having 2 subpar seasons in her absence, the demands for her to return were growing stronger and stronger. Rumors started swirling that it was happening, with Tamra's castmate on Ultimate Girls Trip, Jill Zarin, officially letting it slip, which Tamra was totally cool about.
Hey guys, I have a big announcement. Jill is the thirstiest bitch I've ever met.
She officially announced her return with a surprise appearance on Watch What Happens Live, making me cry tears of joy. From the teases we've gotten about the season, it sounds like Tamra really didn't hold back and had a lot of pent-up anger to vent, so we'll see if the tide stays in Tamra's favor, but for now, all is right in the OC. So yeah, I hope this video has proven just how instrumental Tamra was to Housewives culture. She invented so many Housewife staples and proved time and time again that she had the instincts to create a good show. I'd be interested to hear how much of this was intentional and how much was just natural. Did she know buddying up to Vicki would create such an iconic long-term duo, and that Gina Kia was a sinking ship, or was she just naturally drawn to Vicki over Gina? Did she know that we wanted to see feuds between housewives, or did she just hate Gretchen? Whatever the case, I firmly believe that she should be on everyone's Housewives Mount Rushmore. She's certainly on mine. So wow, that was a lot. I literally started working on this video as soon as she announced her return, which was 9 months ago. Oh my god, it's like my baby. So I'd really appreciate it if you'd share it with any other Tamra lovers you know, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And let me know if you like this one Housewife Spotlight video thing. If there's someone else you'd like to see a video devoted to, let me know. If you want to connect on social media, find me on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at DeeplySuperFish. I'll link them as well as everything I've mentioned throughout this video in the description. But for now, I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!